Are you decentering men?
I mean this as the highest compliment possible. I have never seen a more man-repelling look in my life. Thank you.
Or are you for the male gaze?
Hello, you dirty little boys.
Suddenly online, there's a discussion among women to decenter men from their lives. And if you're a woman who center men in your life, well then you can't be a good friend to other girls or be a true feminist.
I've said this before and I'm gonna say it again. Male-centered women are dangerous as hell.
You can't make a woman who centers her entire existence around men a friend. You can try.
And one way to show your values is through style and your feminine expression, specifically who you are dressing for.
I don't do this for the misogynistic male gaze. I do it for my gaze. And damn, my tits look good.
So do you repel men or do you attract them? This video isn't meant to target anyone specifically. I'm not here to call out one girl, one artist, or one trend. I'm pointing to a pattern I've started noticing, and that is, we might be more centered on men than we think. And that sounds contradictory, because online it feels like women are done with men. Having a boyfriend is embarrassing, dressing for men is cringy, seeking validation from men is lame. All of this falls under what is now often called decentering men. This term specifically was popularized by Shears Taylor in 2019. In an article in Cosmopolitan, she says, "This phrase resonates because it gives language to a quiet, growing rage. It speaks to the exhaustion of organizing your life around men's potential, opinion, or comfort. Speaks to the clarity that comes when you finally stop contorting yourself, when you finally say, I will not sacrifice myself for a system that was built to consume me." And on the surface, that makes sense. But somewhere along the way, decentering men stopped being only about who you date and started being about how you present yourself. In the 2020s, femininity itself has become ideological. There's no hiding that hyper-feminine expression has been on the rise the last few years, either as a trad wife, clean girl, or bimbo. But what is interesting is that more and more come with an ideological or political reasoning for their styles. Whether it's a trad wife basing her style in her traditional values, or the bimbo basing herself in progressive values. On one end, you're in alignment with men, and on the other, you're in opposition to them. Simultaneously, the same style can be framed as empowering or regressive. For example, the same hyper-feminine look can be read as feminist, anti-feminist, ironic, sincere, progressive, or conservative, depending on who's explaining it. However, in all of this, it starts to feel like women and girls are attempting to justify their feminine expression. And somehow, men do find themselves at the center of that justification. To be hyperfeminine in the 2020s is to be read constantly through a political lens. If you don't police yourself, others are sure to do it. Take for example Sabrina Carpenter and the question, does she dress for the female gaze or the male gaze? The term male gaze is thrown around a lot lately, but for those who don't know, the male gaze was established by the British feminist film theorist Laura Mulvey in 1975 in her essay Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, to describe the act of depicting women in the visual arts and in literature from a masculine heterosexual perspective. Oftentimes, it represented women as sexual objects for the pleasure of the male viewer. It is interesting though how we've taken something that has been used to describe how men have depicted women in arts and film and applied it to actual women. Before, it was to criticize the person behind the camera, but now we rather criticize the woman in front of it. Up until the release of her 7th album, Man's Best Friend, Sabrina Carpenter was loved as a girl's girl, someone who aligned with the female gaze and progressive femininity, a woman who unapologetically embraced her own sexuality. During her short and sweet tour, she would often play on sexual innuendos, placing herself in provocative and sexual position, and wear lingerie-inspired outfits. Up until the release of the infamous album, it was all good and fun. After the release, the tone shifted.
Sabrina Carpenter does not want to make subversive feminist art because she's not a feminist. Sabrina Carpenter makes art for the male gaze because she loves living in the male gaze. She loves being the epitome of men's desire. I don't know how so many of you fooled yourselves into thinking Sabrina Carpenter was ever a girl's girl. Do you listen to her lyrics?
Think about how different it would be if it was a queer artist and it was like a woman holding her hair like that. That would be entirely different because of the power dynamics of gender. Or if the roles were reversed and it was a man like on his legs like that with like Sabrina holding his hair or something. That would have been a statement. But just doing the thing that we expect isn't a statement.
Everything she had done was now being questioned. If she could allow that, then maybe she wasn't for the girls after all. Some fans even speculated that the image must be a trick, that it would later be revealed that the man was actually a woman, or herself, or something else entirely. Anything but what it appeared to be. Obviously, the issue wasn't that it was sexual, but the type of sexuality. One that suggested heterosexual desire in a submissive manner instead of an empowering one. And that does seem to be the important part, the perception. That a woman shouldn't put herself in a submissive role to a man, but she should remain active. And that feels very much in line with feminist thinkers like Simone de Beauvoir, who described man as the transcendent subject and a woman as the immanence. The one positioned as passive, acted upon rather than acting. To take charge of one's own sexuality is seen as feminist and progressive, until it isn't. This decade has seen the rise and normalization of sex work on a mass scale with platforms such as OnlyFans, which speaks to this shift in control. The feminist logic behind it is that women can take control of the gaze and the profits by monetizing their own sexualization, rather than allowing men and industries to benefit from it instead. But only in some cases. Here comes Sydney Sweeney. In a way, she and Sabrina Carpenter are quite similar. Two blonde American girls, similar age, both playing on their sexuality. Yet Sydney has been labeled as for the male gaze.
For the majority of her career, Sydney Sweeney has been for the male gaze.
At first, there was a sympathetic attitude towards Sydney, as her body has been quite sexualized in some of the roles she has played, most notably in Euphoria. However, when she started taking charge of this sexualization and profiting from it, it wasn't received that well. How is it that we can champion platforms where women profit from their own sexualization, defend the free expression of female desire, and yet respond with discomfort when Sydney does precisely that, openly monetizing and acknowledging her attractiveness? This is quite odd given the baddie culture online that built itself on women unapologetically and proudly expressing their attractiveness and sexual appeal. However, when Sydney leans into it, she is accused of being a white supremacist or a Nazi.
The whole ad relies on the double entendre of jeans and jeans. It's more than a cheeky wordplay, it's a dog whistle. We are seeing the rise of fascism in America. And with this comes this rise of eugenics.
You guys are complaining about that Sydney Sweeney jeans ad, so I went and saw it. That's Nazi propaganda.
I'm not saying that Sydney Sweeney is perfect and without mistakes, but it is interesting which women we include and which we exclude from the baddie club. Perhaps this also leans on the perception that Sydney is for the guys. For example, when Sydney announced that she was launching a lingerie brand, people thought it was a bad idea because she apparently has no female audience.
And yet again I have to ask, who is she doing this for? Who is the target customer? Who is supposed to buy lingerie? Either women, but women are currently not her biggest fans.
Hey, no one's gonna buy the Sydney Sweeney lingerie brand.
That's really insane. To make a product for women when you low-key pissed us all off, so.
When her film Chrissy flopped, people argued that it flopped because her supposed male audience wouldn't want to watch her play a queer role.
Going all in on men in your career, if you aren't one, is the biggest mistake that you will make in your career, period. Sydney Sweeney is a perfect example of this. So the new movie that she's in called Christy, it flopped big time over the weekend when it opened. And the reason for that is because who do you think was gonna go see that movie? That's not men wanting to go watch her in like some pretty outfit. This is her like quote ugly role. Like she's just gonna try to be a really good actress in this. And you know who pays to go see those movies? Women.
The point is that the judgment of Sabrina and Sydney seems to be rooted in men's attraction to them, or what we perceive it to be. And we can all wonder why Sydney is deemed more sexually appealing to men while Sabrina is not. And through that perspective, isn't our judgment male-centered? As in, we judge if we like a woman depending on if men find her attractive or not. Suddenly, it's valid to criticize a woman if she seems to be too much centered on men, which might explain the man repellent trend.
Men hate my outfits. They're so mad that I'm not hot like how I was in Uncut Gems. I hear that all the time, but I don't care because the girls love it. The girls and the gays love it.
In a way, it is understandable how styles such as bimbocore has been reclaimed, transforming it from something regressive to something progressive.
She's actually a radical leftist who's pro-sex work, pro-Black Lives Matter, pro-LGBTQ, pro-choice, and will always be there for her girls, gays, and theys. If you're homophobic, I'll castrate you.
However, that might also be the reason why girls and women feel it's necessary to specify that their style is not for men, or paint entire pictures that certain styles are in fact just unappealing for men in general.
So these are my man repellent outfits. For this outfit of mine that was all over Twitter, I feel like demonias are like instant man repellent. Same with anything Sanrio related and especially a corset. So with those three things, this was instant man repellent. I would say I'm just like a kid in this outfit, so I think that's man repellent enough unless they're like a really creepy man. The vibe is just, it's man repellent. Okay, this is a recent look. This was my Galentine's Day look from Valentine's Day, and this is man repellent because of the corset, and I feel like this is such like a girl's outfit. Okay, some would say this is male gaze because I'm showing skin, but I don't think this is. I really don't think this is. Like, I think guys want you to show skin in like a very casual way, and this is just too dressy, too princessy to be male gaze. This is the last one. This one is man repellent. Although it is a short skirt, the boots make it man repellent because they're platformed, they have hearts on them, and it's just too extra. If an outfit's extra, it is man repellent. You're welcome. I hope this helped.
No disrespect to this girl, but miniskirts, corsets, and classic feminine silhouettes are not historically known for repelling male attention. At some point, it is not about the clothes, but rather through the ideological lens it is read through. And again, the determining factor is whether it aligns with men or rejects men. Well, actually, it is about a certain group of men. As you hear many women say, they dress for the girls and the gays. Hyperfemininity in the 2020s may reject straight male desire, but it hasn't escaped male spectatorship. It has just redirected it. Suddenly, an outfit that would have been degrading if it was done for the attention of a heterosexual man is now just playful and valid when it's done for the homosexual or queer man. The obvious difference is that one group of men are sexually attracted to women, while the others are not or might not be. It does make me wonder if there's something like a gay male gaze, not the gaze directed at men, but the lens through which some gay male spaces elevate and stylize certain types of women. If we can talk about how straight men have shaped images of women in the media, we can probably talk about this too. Anyway, speaking of queerness, it does sometimes seem like it serves a function of signaling that one is decentering men. For example, Sabrina Carpenter's performance at the VMA last year, after her album cover controversy, seemingly had a redeeming effect as she covered the stage with drag queens and queer dancers, aligning herself with progressive values again. Though some have called out this performance as being damage control. I feel that the essay by Malavika Kanal, "Loki, I Chose to Be a Lesbian," captures this decentering of men almost perfectly. This controversial essay frames lesbian identity as a choice by withdrawing from a heterosexual structure she experiences as unequal, which challenges the long-standing "born this way" narrative that underpinned much of queer political struggles. I felt, with sudden certainty, that men were no longer worth it. I did not want to play this incredibly rigged game. I was determined to be gay as a lifestyle. On the innateness of queerness, Kanan says, "Born this way" discourse had its moment, but I think it frames queerness as an unhelpable accident of your birth and not a wonderful, principled choice you can make for yourself. I choose to loudly and decisively align myself with other women because I think it helps all of us, especially straight women. Far from gatekeeping, I want to open the wide house of queerness to them." And she continues, "The truth is, my straight friends are struggling. For many of my dearest friends, the solution, more or less, is decentering men. Close female friendship and rose toys must do the job, at least for now." And Kanan finished with, I choose to pour my immense creativity, love, and care into uplifting women, especially the ones I love platonically, not people I deem my oppressors. As my dear friend recently told me, in a gay appropriation of George Bush, we do not negotiate with terrorists. Patriarchy is the terror. I want to terrorize it back. In a way, she renavigates her motivation from men to women. But I would argue that the main drive seemingly is her relationship to men. It seems like choosing queerness is an ultimate sign that one is rejecting men and favoring women. At some point, queerness seemingly is more a political and cultural alignment than about a sexual orientation, following Kanan's example. But in that context, queerness begins to function almost like a cultural insurance. If desire is directed towards women, or at least framed through queer aesthetics, it is read as progressive. Take for example, Chrissy Schlapecka, Peach PRC, Renee Rapp, or Chapel Roan. All of these women have previously been bisexual, some have been in relationships with men, but have since come out as lesbians and have very strong alignments with the queer community. Kanan's essay shows how disillusionment with men can become central to the way lesbian identity is articulated, which makes you wonder how much of the story is about desire and how much is about refusal. The latest addition to this cultural shift is Dochi, and she as well has expressed negative view on straight men.
Okay, this is a huge red flag for me. All right. You know what's so crazy? I was gonna say men. I mean, strike one. You're a man. Yeah. And you're heterosexual.
Yeah. And this negative opinion of men seems to also be in service of decentering men.
Hear me out. I think that hating men is an absolutely acceptable pit stop on your way to decentering men.
I would say that the ultimate expression of decentering men comes in the form of misandry, which has seen a notable rise amongst women and queer men the last few years. There's a lot of disagreement when it comes to misandry. Some argue that misandry is a valid response when living in a patriarchal structure and that it can never compare to misogyny. Ironically, misandry can function almost opposite to the goal of decentering men. Instead of seeking male approval, the focus simply shifts from validation to resentment. And as we've seen, despite the disdain for men, they often remain the axis around which many women's choices and identities are organized. Even in rejection, men remain central. Of course, that is not everyone, but if you choose your hairstyle, makeup, or nail length only because men dislike those things, well, I think it's time to sit down and reflect a bit on yourself. Thank you for watching my video. So, what do you think? Do you agree with the decentering men movement? Do you disagree? I would love to hear your opinions, so leave a comment down below. See you in the next one. Bye!